We like to start the show. In 1541, Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto reached the Mississippi River. In 1886, Dr. John Pemberton sells the first glass of Coca-Cola at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta. Did you know that? In 1984, the Soviet Union announced it would boycott the Summer Games in Los Angeles, leading to a total of 14 countries skipping the games. Interesting questions surrounding the World Cup. Yes, we know that's going to be an important thing. Look at that. How is that even there? I don't know. What an interesting day we're having. Do I have something plugged into the wrong screen? Anyways, it is No Socks Day. It's National World Have a Coke Day. Oh, that feels icky. That feels weird. It's World Donkey Day and National Coconut Cream Pie Day. What an interesting start to the show. My God, I don't even know where to begin with that. It's good to be here. Let's get right into the stories. I actually want to start out. I don't know how many of you have seen this video of the hummingbird on the leaf. It's kind of like a massively viral video right now on TikTok and Instagram. And it's this like video of this person who it's like found this hummingbird that had died, and they put the hummingbird on top of this leaf. Have you seen the video? Have you seen this video? Am I the only one who saw the video? It's fine. Anyways, it's this very like beautiful video of this poor hummingbird who's passed away, and it's set to this very sad song. And in the comments of the video on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, it's all like people, experiencing loss and pain, and they posted pictures of their pets that passed away, and they picked, pictures of their cats, their dogs, their birds, that kind of thing. And I think it's just like a really powerful reminder to all of us of how like delicately fragile we actually are as human beings. For some reason, it really stuck with me as something that I'd heard about it, people talking about the hummingbird video, and then I actually saw it kind of by chance for someone that had posted it on their timeline. And I think it's an important reminder when we talk about the things that are happening, we talk about what's going on in the world right now. I think it's important for us to take a minute and understand like how delicately fragile all forms of life are. I think one of the problems that we have just as a society in general is obviously the fact that we live in a society of me. And when you do that, you kind of dismiss like the value of human life, let alone the life of other things like animals. So I don't know. Part of me that really stuck with me. But let's get right into the stories today. I have three stories. They all tie together. Let's first start in Virginia. So obviously, Virginia has been the center of a lot of attention lately. In April, Virginia voters went to the polls and they approved this massive redistricting effort. So it was a clear win. Democrats stood to pick up 4 congressional seats, as many as 4 congressional seats, from 6 to 5 to 10 to 1. Well, this morning, the Virginia Supreme Court threw that all out. So what happened in a 4-3 ruling was the majority ruled that the legislature did not follow the right procedure when it passed the constitutional amendment, specifically that it failed to clear 2 consecutive legislative sessions with an intervening general election in between. Justice Arthur Kelsey wrote that the violation irreparably undermines the integrity of the resulting referendum vote, and it renders it null and void. The reason I bring this story up today is that the Democratic Party is making a fool's choice, a fool's errand, if they think that they can go back and forth for the next decade in this sort of war of gerrymandering. The Democrats think, oh, we'll play this game that the Republicans are playing with gerrymandering. But the thing that the Democrats fail to understand is they're not bringing they're bringing a rubber band to a gunfight. Because what we have to understand is that the Republicans have been doing this for the last 50 years. They've been preparing, planning, and executing a massive strategy for the last, more than 50 years, to be honest with you. But now all of a sudden, Democrats are like, oh, we're going to play dirty. We're going to play this gerrymandering game. We're going to get involved in this. And the reality is the Democratic Party is just fundamentally not equipped. In addition to the fact that they don't have a leadership structure that is in place to actually do the kind of progressive change that's necessary, or to actually have a set of stones to actually do some of the things that they need to do. They just are fundamentally unprepared. And the Republicans have been spending the last decades electing judges who would do exactly what these judges did. Obviously, Republicans have celebrated this. The president is celebrating this. But my biggest cautionary point is if the Democrats think that American elections and that the future of democracy is going to be dependent on a constant back and forth chess game of gerrymandering, they're fucking stupid. This is not a situation where we're going to win democracy by taking one congressional district here, or taking another congressional district there, because the thing that Democrats fail to understand is the Republicans will always find a way to play dirty, and they will get dirtier, and they will go lower, and they will fight in places that the Democrats simply fail to imagine. And so what they should actually be doing, what they should actually be practicing is implementing and going for policy which makes them electable. I know this is controversial. I know it sounds crazy. But if Democrats want to start winning elections, if Democrats want to start winning the majority of these votes, they have to put policy forward that makes that possible. They're not going to do this. They're not going to win by just ticking off one congressional map here, ticking off one congressional map there, while failing to implement the policy demands of the American people. Right now, Americans are struggling financially, and most of us are struggling morally with how we're spending our money in these endless wars. But the Democratic Party has no interest in addressing those things. And as long as the Democratic Party is willing to just continue to focus almost exclusively on the needs of its corporate donors and foreign political influence, Democrats may be winning special elections right now because people are resisting fascism. But the fact that people are voting for Democrats right now does not mean that they support Democrats. What it means is that they are resisting fascism. It's not complicated. So what this is it's a procedural ruling. It's obviously designed to override an outcome that the people in power didn't like. Voters in Virginia went to the polls. They said yes to this redistricting, and the court said no. But this is what the Republicans have been doing for decades. But the thing is, they're doing it on both fronts. They're gaming the system as they're doing with gerrymandering, like they did in Texas, and they're talking the talk. Now, they're not delivering on the promises, but that's the whole point. Democrats not only can't talk the talk, they also can't deliver on the promises because they don't have electoral power. My main point, and I've said this many times, and I'll continue to say this, is simple. The Democratic Party seems to think that their electoral strategy for success is to do gerrymandering. Like somewhere, someone in the Democratic Party woke up and they're like, oh shit, we could do gerrymandering too. Let's do that. Instead of actually thinking, how do we get policy that makes people excited? And as long as the Democrats ignore excitable policy, they're going to lose. And they might win. They might win temporarily based on this push against fascism. But in the long term, we're fucked if this is what they continue to do. Fun. So moving on to the next story, I've really avoided sensationalizing conversations around hantavirus. I think it is unpalatable and kind of icky for the people who are doing that. But we do need to understand that in 2025, the Trump administration shut down the Center for Research in Emerging Infectious Disease, 10 research centers funded by the NHS with $82 million to study pathogens just like this. The N1H issued a stop work order and declared the research specific to hantavirus unsafe for Americans and not a good use for taxpayer funding. Scientists who worked in those areas said, of course, that this was nonsense, and there was no evidence that the work was unsafe, but the money had already been taken. One of those centers, as I specifically said, had a pilot program specifically aimed at studying the Andes virus. This is the strain of hantavirus that now everyone is apparently talking about that is apparently able to spread between humans. About $100,000 of that funding would have gone to a project in Argentina where this Andes virus is endemic. Of course, now we know there's this active outbreak on the MV Hondias, which departed Argentina on April 1st. As of today, we know that there are 5 confirmed cases and 4 suspected cases. But what we now also know is that the government specifically cut funding, which might have helped in this area. 3 people are, of course, dead now that we know about. And the CDC did not even issue a public statement about the outbreak until 4 hours after news organizations had already reported on this. So now we have significant questions, not about the virus. That is someone else's lane. I am not talking about the virus. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff. but I am an expert in accountability. And now we know that the CDC is apparently not even interested in releasing a press statement. But it's not the only area. Let's talk about Kash Patel. And I want to be very careful here because this story does deserve to be taken seriously, even though it is kind of unhinged on the surface. FBI Director Kash Patel travels. Let me back up here. FBI Director Kash Patel apparently travels with personalized bottles of Woodford Reserve bourbon. These are engraved. These bottles of bourbon say Kash Patel, FBI Director, and feature an FBI shield. Surrounding the FBI shield, the official government shield, is a band of text and the preferred spelling of his own name, Kash, K-A$H. Apparently, he gives these bottles out to FBI staff and civilians he meets in the course of his duties, whatever the course of his duties are. In March, he brought at least one case of this bourbon to the FBI's training facility at Quantico for a seminar led by UFC fighters. One of those bottles went missing. And Kash Patel apparently lost his mind about this. Because of this, because his missing bottle of bourbon went missing, Kash Patel threatened to prosecute people. He threatened to polygraph people over a bottle of bourbon. Multiple FBI agents called a retired agent for legal advice about how to handle the meltdown. It turned into an absolute shit show. He now advises current employees on how to run away and to handle these outbursts from the director. The Atlantic published this story the same day the FBI announced that it was investigating the journalist who wrote it, Sarah Fitzpatrick at The Atlantic. She had previously reported that Patel was known to drink excessively. I mean, I think I might have solved this case here. That he routinely delayed time-sensitive operations and was often unreachable behind locked doors. Kash Patel then sued The Atlantic for $250 million. The Atlantic, by the way, is run by Steve Jobs' former wife, so they've got a lot of money. They're going to be able to defend themselves. Then after that, the FBI opened an investigation into that same reporter. That is retaliation, plainly. The man running the top law enforcement agency in the entire country is allegedly drinking on the job. He's giving personalized bourbon to subordinates, to members of the public. And then when one of those things goes missing, he launches a full-out investigation threatening to prosecute people over a missing bottle of bourbon, to polygraph people. And then when a reporter talks about it, he sues them for $250 million. All of these stories are connected. Each and every one of these stories is connected. It is a story about the nexus of power and the increasing attempt to make you feel as though you have no power. But we, of course, know that is not the case. Here on the Ignition News and in our community, we continue to demonstrate the importance of showing up, holding power accountable, and not giving up, most importantly. It is because of reporters like the reporter in The Atlantic, but most importantly, it is because of people like you who show up every day in your community to push back, to stand up, 10 toes down on the street. We are facing an incredible amount of uncertainty. We obviously have the situation with the cruise ship and the virus. I really am trying not to sensationalize that, and I'm just not an expert, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to. There are people who are better to talk about that than me. But what we can talk about is the fact that I think anyone with eyes and ears can see our government is not communicating to us in any effective way about it. And that I can talk about, that I can help us understand. Of course, then you have the Democrats celebrating. Do you remember how the Democrats were celebrating Virginia? Oh, we're so cool. We're so awesome. I'm pretty sure even Obama was talking about it. They were, oh, we're so cool and smart. We just redistricted Virginia. And then a court just wiped it away. And now what's their plan? How's that any functionally different? I would actually ask you this question, and I know this is probably going to piss some people off, but in terms of your personal safety and your ability to have a safe and free and functional life in democracy. I can't, there's, again, this is going to get clipped. I don't see a ton of difference between an FBI director losing his mind about an engraved bottle of bourbon and a Democratic Party, which is so functionally incompetent that they think that they're going to solve democracy by gerrymandering, which is a policy they have been fundamentally against for decades. And then when they fail to do that, they don't even seem to have a backup plan. That is why we have to pay attention now more than ever. If you didn't get a chance to check out my special report, please go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and listen to yesterday's very special report about data centers. We are tracking and reporting on why and how these data center companies are focusing on rural America. It's a part of a series that we'll be covering here on the Ignition News because you need to understand how and why these massive companies are focusing their efforts on small rural communities and what those small rural communities can do to fight it. And I'll close out with just one example. And one example of how you as a citizen can make a change when you actually get involved. There's actually a data center going up about 40 miles from me, allegedly, purportedly, in a town called Boulder City. It's one of the smallest and most beautiful communities in the state of Nevada. And what's happening is pretty shocking. The local government is trying to ram through this initiative, but at the same time, they're trying to do a ballot measure, a ballot initiative, which they're openly telling their citizens, hey, if you're concerned about data centers, vote on this ballot initiative in November. But the problem is, if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't know that that ballot initiative has nothing to do with the multi-billion-dollar data center that is currently being proposed. The government is acting like it's caring, acting like it wants to stop it, but at the same time, it's cramming through these projects. And this is happening all over the country. If you don't pay attention, these things will come for you. And I want to also say, we need to bring back the term NIMBY. NIMBY has always been this term that's been sort of derisive. NIMBY means not in my backyard. It's generally a term that they apply to Karens who don't want to put up apartments in their neighborhoods. But I think we need to empower people to start saying not in my backyard for these data centers. We need to make that term cool again for people to stand up in their communities and say, I will not have a data center in my backyard, near my river, near my fields, near my schools. I will not have a data center polluting my community, disrupting the noise, making that I can't even see the stars at night anymore. Not in my backyard. It's great to have you. Let's see, it's Friday, so that we'll be live on Monday. If it's your first time listening to the show, please go find us on all your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you back live on Monday. Stay safe and stay lit. Have a good day. Yay. Good show. Good show. Interesting Friday. Record, upload. Oh, we had a nice little crew on YouTube. That was nice. Done and